Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be looking at the healthcare system.
Specifically how it deals with chronic disease.
Yeah, and to help us kind of unpack this whole topic.
We're going to be looking at a chapter from Good Energy, a book by Dr. Casey Means.
Yeah, she's a Stanford-trained physician.
And she's also the founder of metabolic health company Levels.
Yeah, so she's really coming at this from kind of both sides,
Exactly.
as a doctor and also as someone who's kind of working outside of the system.
Right. And in this chapter, she shares a really personal story.
Yeah, about her mom.
Who was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Right. And this experience really kind of opened her eyes
to some of the flaws in the system.
Like the hidden incentives.
Yeah, and just kind of how things really work behind the scenes.
So our mission today is really to help you guys understand
those incentives.
Yeah, and ultimately we want you to walk away from this deep dive
feeling more empowered.
Yes, as a patient. So we're going to be unpacking some really surprising information along the way.
Yeah, did you know that 77% of 21-year-olds today are actually not fit for military service?
That's crazy, right?
It's a crazy stat.
What's going on there?
Is it diet? Is it lifestyle?
Is it the environment?
Right. What does that say about just the overall health of young adults?
Exactly. And how does that connect to this rise in chronic diseases?
That's right. And so I think to really kind of kick things off here, it's important to understand Dr. Means' story.
About her mother.
Right. Because it's really powerful and it really kind of sets the stage for everything else.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, her mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Right.
And, the doctors
immediately recommended all these
battery of tests and procedures.
Yeah. And, being a doctor herself, Dr. Means kind of had this unique perspective.
Yeah. She could see beyond
her saying.
Yeah. The standard recommendations.
Yeah.
And she recognized that these procedures.
Standard practice.
They weren't likely to actually extend her mother's life.
Right. Significantly extend her life.
Yeah. And on top of that,
potentially decrease her quality of life.
Especially given the COVID restrictions.
Oh, yeah.
And the isolation of being in the hospital.
Yeah. Being away from family.
Exactly.
At such a critical time.
And, it's interesting because she also couldn't ignore the financial incentives driving these recommendations.
Yeah, she was very aware of that.
So these procedures,
while, again, offering minimal benefit to her mother,
they would have generated a lot of revenue for the hospital.
A ton.
Right. And so this brings up a really crucial question, I think.
It does.
Which is, are the needs of the patient
always aligned with the system's financial interests?
That's the question, right?
So ultimately, they decided against those procedures. They said no.
They did.
Yeah.
It was a tough choice.
Oh, I bet.
But they chose to prioritize her quality of life over these potentially futile interventions.
And they focused on making her remaining days
as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, and meaningful.
At home with loved ones.
Surrounded by family.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a heartbreaking situation for sure.
Absolutely.
But it really highlights
the importance of
patient autonomy.
Yes. Advocating for what matters.
Even when you're facing a system.
Yeah.
That might not prioritize those values.
100%. And, it makes you think.
It does.
How often are patients, in these situations and they're just going along with what the doctor says.
Right, because they don't feel...
It's hard to question it.
Right, exactly.
And it also kind of makes you question,
It does.
The biases within the system.
Yeah.
And Dr. Means actually shares a story.
She does.
About a friend of hers.
Who's a cancer surgeon.
Okay.
And he confided in her. About the pressure that he felt.
To recommend surgery.
Even when it wasn't always the best option for the patient.
Wait, so even surgeons feel this pressure?
They do.
Wow. I mean, you would think.
You'd think they'd have more autonomy.
Yeah.
But it really just shows you...
those power dynamics.
Right.
That are at play.
And patients often place so much trust in their doctors.
Especially when it's something as serious as cancer.
Right.
And that can create this imbalance. People don't feel comfortable questioning
the recommendation.
Even if they have doubts.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how many people are undergoing unnecessary procedures.
Right.
Because they don't feel empowered to question.
And it's we're conditioned to just trust that medical authority.
Yes.
Without really understanding
the full context.
Right.
Wow. And then you add to that
the fact that
the healthcare industry as a whole profits from treating sickness.
Right, not necessarily from preventing it.
Right.
So it's the system's set up to incentivize procedures over really addressing those root causes.
Right. It's we're putting out fires.
instead of preventing them in the first place.
And wouldn't that mean that the system is working against its own goals?
Kind of a paradox, right?
Yeah, to promote health.
Yeah, and to really understand this.
We need to look at the system's approach.
To acute versus chronic care.
Right.
So for acute conditions.
Like a broken bone.
An infection.
Right, something that needs immediate attention.
The system excels.
It's designed for that.
It's great.
Rapid response.
Right.
But when it comes to chronic diseases,
like diabetes,
heart disease,
obesity,
things that develop over time,
often due to lifestyle factors.
Right.
It's a different story.
Totally.
Because those require a much more nuanced approach.
And the system, with its bias towards interventions
struggles
to effectively address these conditions.
Right.
And the numbers reflect this.
They do.
The rise in chronic disease has coincided with increased healthcare spending.
Which suggests that
our current approach isn't working.
Yeah, we're pouring money into a system that isn't designed to address
the root causes of these illnesses.
Yeah, and so
that brings us to the question of, like, where does that leave us?
As patients.
Right, and what can we do about it?
And I think a key part of that is understanding the influence of money.
Okay.
And incentives within the healthcare system.
Money and healthcare. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so money and healthcare, kind of a taboo topic, but...
Yeah, it is.
Dr. Means doesn't shy away from it.
She doesn't.
And so neither should we.
Yeah.
She brings up some really interesting examples, like...
She does.
She talks about this government panel convened to address chronic pain.
Yeah.
That's pretty straightforward.
Well.
But then you look at the panel members and...
9 out of the 19 members had direct ties to opioid manufacturers.
9 out of 19.
Almost half the panel.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, how can we trust recommendations when you have that much potential bias?
Yeah, it really raises questions about, the objectivity of the recommendations.
Yeah, and Dr. Means also points out that during this same period,
the dean of Stanford Medical School, who led this panel, actually secured a huge donation from Pfizer.
Pfizer?
Yeah, one of the biggest opioid manufacturers.
The university.
For the university.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you've got this panel heavily influenced by Pharma.
Right.
Making recommendations about pain management.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the leader of that panel
is securing funding
from a company that produces opioids.
It's like...
It's a little too close for comfort.
It makes you wonder.
It really does.
Yeah.
About the objectivity of the whole thing.
Totally. And this influence isn't limited to just opioids either.
Oh, yeah.
Like Dr. Means cites studies where researchers receiving grants from the NIH also had financial ties to pharmaceutical companies.
Meaning that the research itself could be skewed.
Potentially, yeah.
To favor certain drugs or treatments.
The potential for bias is there.
Wow. And it gets even more complicated.
It does.
When you consider that even medical school deans,
the leaders of these institutions,
have been known to receive payments from pharmaceutical companies.
So it's not just isolated incidents.
It's not. It seems very systemic.
Yeah. And so how does this actually play out in a doctor's daily practice?
Right.
I mean, most doctors aren't on these government panels or
They're not
conducting high-level research.
Yeah.
So how does it actually impact, patients on the ground?
Well, think about the merit-based incentive payment system.
MIPS.
Or MIPS, yeah.
Okay.
It was implemented as part of the Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
And it basically ties a doctor's compensation to certain performance metrics.
So you would think that those metrics would prioritize patient health.
But that's not always the case.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of these metrics are based on whether doctors prescribe specific medications or perform certain procedures.
Okay.
And this is where RVUs come in, relative value units.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
They basically assign a numerical value to every medical service.
So like a simple consultation would have a lower RVU? Much lower.
Than a complex surgery.
Exactly.
Okay.
And those RVUs directly impact a doctor's reimbursement under MIPS.
So performing a procedure like a surgery
generates way more revenue
than
like counseling a patient on lifestyle changes.
Even though those lifestyle changes might be more beneficial.
Right. It's like they're incentivized to treat the symptoms.
Rather than address the root cause.
Exactly.
Which seems backwards.
Very backwards.
Like preventing illness should be the goal.
It should be.
Right.
But it's a complex issue. And what makes it even more complex is that medical leaders are often silent on the role of diet and lifestyle.
You mean they're not talking about the
things that are contributing?
They're directly contributing
to these health problems.
To the problem.
In the first place.
Yeah, like why aren't they emphasizing healthy eating exercise?
Stress management.
All that stuff.
All the important stuff.
Especially when you consider that 77% of 21-year-olds can't even meet the basic
fitness requirements
to join the military.
That's a huge red flag.
It's a big one.
It really suggests a disconnect between what we know and what's being emphasized within the system.
Right, like remember the Surgeon General's report on smoking? Like that led to a significant decline.
In smoking rates?
Because people took it seriously.
Yeah, they changed their behavior.
Right?
So why not apply that same approach?
Exactly.
To things like sugar consumption.
Or the dangers of processed foods.
Right.
Why aren't we seeing the same level of urgency
from medical leaders
on these issues?
And Dr. Means raises some concerns about, the role of financial conflicts of interest here.
Okay.
She points out that organizations like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics receive a huge chunk of their funding from the food industry.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So the organization that's supposed to be guiding us on healthy eating
is taking money
from the companies.
From the companies that are making the food. That are making us sick.
That's making us sick.
Yeah.
That's problematic.
It is very problematic.
How can they be objective when they have these financial ties?
It's a big concern.
Yeah.
And it's not just the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics either.
Okay.
The American Diabetes Association, which is dedicated to fighting diabetes, has also accepted millions of dollars from companies like Coke and Cadbury.
Yeah. Who produce products that are directly linked to the development of diabetes.
That's like a betrayal of trust.
Yes.
If the organizations that are supposed to be advocating for our health are compromised by these financial ties, who can we trust?
That's a great question.
It is a tough question.
It's a tough one.
And it's something that Dr. Means really grapples with in her book.
Yeah, it paints a pretty disheartening picture of the system.
It does.
But I know Dr. Means isn't all doom and gloom.
She's not.
She's also about empowering individuals to take control of their health.
Yeah. So what's the takeaway here?
What can we do?
Yeah, what can we do to navigate this complex and often flawed system?
Yeah.
I feel like we've kind of uncovered some pretty concerning things here.
We have.
But I'm hoping we can end on a more
positive note.
Optimistic. Yeah. Like, what's the takeaway for our listeners?
Yeah, what can we do?
Yeah, how can we protect our health?
When the system itself seems like it's working against us, it can feel really overwhelming.
It can.
But Dr. Means' message isn't one of despair.
Okay.
It's a call to action.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, she argues that even though the healthcare system isn't always structured to prevent chronic disease, we as individuals have more power than we realize.
So it's about taking ownership of our own health.
Yeah.
Not being passive.
No. And becoming informed consumers of healthcare.
Yeah.
Understanding the system's limitations.
Yeah.
And making choices that prioritize our well-being. That makes sense, but
how do you do that?
Yeah, with so much conflicting information. Like, where do we even begin?
That's where her good energy framework comes in.
Okay.
She provides a really practical roadmap for improving metabolic health through lifestyle changes.
So focusing on things that often get overlooked in conventional healthcare?
Like nutrition, movement, sleep, stress management.
All those
those foundational pillars.
Foundational things that we know are important, but
we don't always prioritize.
Don't.
All right.
Yeah, so instead of just treating symptoms
with medication, we're talking about addressing
the root cause.
What's the root causes?
I like that.
Yeah.
Shifting the focus from being reactive to proactive.
Exactly.
Instead of waiting for something to go wrong.
We're taking steps to prevent it.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in practice?
Right.
Like, what are some specific things that people can do to implement these good energy principles?
So she goes into a lot of detail in the book.
Okay.
But it really boils down to a few key areas.
Okay.
One is focusing on whole, unprocessed foods.
Okay.
Fruits, vegetables, lean proteins.
The stuff our bodies are designed to thrive on.
Exactly. The kind of diet
our bodies
were designed for.
What about movement?
Yeah.
I know exercise is important, but
it can be tough.
Yeah, that can feel like a chore.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be grueling workouts.
Okay.
It's about finding ways to move your body.
Okay.
That you enjoy.
Okay.
So whether that's dancing, hiking, swimming.
Taking a walk.
Even. Right. It all counts.
Okay.
And then sleep and stress management.
Oh, that's a big one.
That's a huge one.
I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Especially in today's world.
Yeah.
But prioritizing sleep and finding healthy ways to manage stress are essential for metabolic health.
And she provides specific strategies for improving sleep hygiene and stress reduction.
Yeah, and for incorporating those into daily life.
It sounds like a holistic approach.
It is.
It's not just focusing on one thing.
Yeah, it's recognizing that everything is interconnected.
Right.
And that these lifestyle factors have a huge impact
on our overall health.
And the best part is they're largely within our control.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so even though the system might have its limitations,
we're not powerless.
We have the power.
We do.
Yeah, to take control.
And to create a ripple effect.
I like that.
Of positive change.
And that's really the empowering message that Dr. Means wants to leave us with.
Yeah, we may not be able to change the system overnight.
Right.
But we can change our own habits.
Start with ourselves.
Our own choices.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we can create a healthier future.
For ourselves and our communities.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, if our listeners want to learn more about all of this and delve deeper into Dr. Means's good energy framework,
definitely check out the book.
Check out the book. Yeah, it's full of practical advice.
It is.
And inspiring stories.
And remember, taking control of your health is a journey.
It's a journey.
Not a destination.
Right.
So start small.
Yeah.
Make gradual changes and be patient.
Be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Into the complexities of the healthcare system and the power of individual choice.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.